Part 96. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yun Suya. Chapter 951. Chapter 951. Xiaju died together with him. While Chu Shenxia was still wondering what kind of thrilling dream he had, Chu Shengming had already walked up to Chu Shenxia, patted him on the shoulder and said, "What are you doing standing still? Why don't you go to bed? Not going to work tomorrow morning?" Chu Shenxia was stunned for a moment. Sleeping? Wasn't he sleeping and dreaming? Chu Shenxia reached out and pinched himself. Ah, it hurts. Chu Shengming heard the sound and looked at Chu Shenxia helplessly. "Oh my God, brother, I'm not dreaming." Chu Shenxia rushed towards Chu Shengming with a roar. After realizing what had just happened, Chu Shenxia was stunned. Just now, did his Xiaoying cousin, Yu Lingfeng, and 11 Ju all jump off the building? With Chu Shenxia thinking this, he turned around to see what was going on downstairs through the window. But just as Chu Shenxia turned around, Chu Shengming reached out and grabbed the hem of his clothes. "Where are you going?" I looked at the window. I just saw cousin Sakura and the others jumping down." Chu Shenxia's voice was trembling, and the tone of every word was full of disbelief. "Stop looking and go to bed." Chu Shengming looked indifferent and dragged Chu Shenxia towards his room. Chu Shenxia was still confused. What happened? At this time, Xia Ying, who was possessed by 8 goo insects at the same time, felt that she was full of energy, and her only thought was to kill the person who kidnapped Stefan and killed Xiaoju with her own hands. Xia Ying suddenly had a strange feeling, and then followed the feeling and walked towards a nearby park and into a dense jungle. Xia Ying's face was blank, like a puppet without a thought. After clearing the jungle, Xia Ying saw the corpse of a man who looked like he was dead. At this moment, the only thought in Xia Ying's mind was not nausea, but an inexplicable pleasure. Her intuition told her that this person was the one who killed Xiaoju, and the reason why he died was because Xiaoju inserted the poisonous needle from her tail into his body and died with him. Xia Ying looked calm as she walked towards the man, rummaging around for something useful on him. Xia Ying found a pistol, a dagger, and a black tattoo of the word branch on the collarbone of the deceased. So, the person who kidnapped Stefan was really a person from Qinsha. People from Qinsha, why did they touch Stefan and why did they kidnap Fanyan? Ah, kill someone. At this time, a homeless man passing by heard the movement in the grass and came over to take a look curiously. Then he happened to see the man who died in a bad way, and Xia Ying with blood on his hands next to him. Xia Ying turned around, her eyes glowing with green light, as if she came from Shura Purgatory. Just one glance made the man tremble with fear, his limbs became weak, and he couldn't run even if he wanted to. Xia Ying stood up, quickly moved to the side of the homeless man, and knocked him unconscious to the ground with a chop. Then, Xia Ying walked toward the guidance in her heart with a cold face without any warmth or expression. Gu Chong remembered the smell of that person just now and sensed it. The group of people hadn't gone far yet, they were still not far away. Xia Ying's pace suddenly quickened. She jumped up a few times and climbed directly onto the high-rise building. She ran flying on the roof while watching every move below from a high position. At this time, Xia Ying's eyes suddenly focused on a black van. Requesting a monthly ticket. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yun Suya. Chapter 952. Chapter 952. I seem to have seen Spider-Man. Xia Ying frowned, then took a flying step and jumped straight towards the van. At this time, 11 Ju and Yu Lingfeng were not far away. Yu Lingfeng found the deceased and the homeless man who was slapped and unconscious. 11 Ju was looking around for something, guarding Yu Lingfeng. Yu Lingfeng frowned. The deceased had been touched. 11 Ju glanced inadvertently and happened to see Xia Ying flying down from a high building. Zihu was stunned and wiped his eyes. Due to the distance, Zihu could only identify that it was a person jumping. No, it should have been flying down. Master, I seem to have seen Spider-Man. 11 Zhu said weakly and tugged at Yu Lingfeng's clothes. What? Yu Lingfeng was confused by what 11 Zhu said. I just saw a man flying down from that tall building. Before 11 Zhu finished speaking, Yu Lingfeng suddenly stood up and interrupted 11 Zhu's next words. It's Xia Ying. Yu Lingfeng said in a calm tone. Xia Ying, she. Zihu was a little in disbelief. Yu Lingfeng turned away and looked at 11 Zhu with a serious face. You forgot, she has a voodoo. After her voodoo possesses her, she can have the ability of the voodoo. Zihu suddenly realized, then, that master. Hurry over. Yu Lingfeng said with a cold face. Xia Ying's goo is very powerful, but it consumes the host's energy. Once the energy is exhausted, she may collapse, or maybe. Yu Lingfeng frowned before completing the next sentence, will die. Zihu's eyes suddenly opened wide, he couldn't help but quicken his pace, and rushed over with Yu Lingfeng. Xia Ying just flew down and landed directly on the roof of the van. The people in the car were startled and looked at each other for a while. Before they could realize what happened, a face suddenly appeared in front of the car. It was a woman's face, with fair skin, beautiful features, and exquisite facial features. She could be said to be a true powerful woman. But at this moment, the woman's eyes were incredibly glowing with a faint green light. Just looking at her like this gave people goosebumps all over her body and made her hair stand on end. The car came to a sudden stop. Xia Ying punched her, broke the window, and rolled over. The people in front started to fight with Xia Ying, but before they fought for a few rounds, those people were beaten by Xia Ying until their noses were bruised and their faces were swollen, and then they were thrown out of the car window. Xia Ying's hand was already from banging on the car window, but she didn't feel any pain at all. In her eyes, there was still the dying look in Xiaoju's dying eyes. In order to see her one last time, it persisted for so long, but it still couldn't escape death. The people in the back seat took advantage of the chaos and ran out of the car. It was midnight at this time, and there were no pedestrians on this stretch of road at night, with only sparse vehicles coming and going. Seeing this scene, the cars passing by immediately sped up and ran away as if running for their lives. Boom dash. Someone took a gun and shot Xia Ying in the chest. Although Xia Ying reacted quickly and did not hit the center of her mouth, she was still bruised. Xia Ying lowered her head suddenly. At this time, the shooter cursed, "What the is your luck? Where did this come from?" Before the man finished speaking, Xia Ying quickly ran in front of him, pulled out a dagger and stabbed him in the heart, causing a gush of blood to flow out. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 953. Chapter 953. Are you human? Just at this time, Yu Lingfeng and 11 Zhu rushed to the scene and saw Xia Ying, who was already red-eyed. Lord, Master. 11 Zhu has never seen Xia Ying like this before, and she was so frightened that she couldn't say a word. Yu Lingfeng pursed her lips. Although there was no excessive reaction on her face, all her worries and panic were hidden in her heart by her thin lips. Master, Sanskrit. At this moment, a woman dressed in black and with piercing eyes suddenly rushed out from the other end of the car. The woman's skin is whiter than snow, her lips are pale and bloodless, and her eyes reveal a blood-stained coldness. She held a pistol in her hand, raised it expressionlessly, and pointed it at Xia Ying's head. While 11 Zhu was still speaking, Yu Lingfeng rushed over and directly blocked the bullet. The bullet happened to hit Yu Lingfeng's heart. However, Fanyan's face was still ashen, without any movement, as if he had been manipulated. Behind Fanyan stood a woman dressed in red. Her skin was like cream, and her lips were as rosy as winter plums. After witnessing Yu Lingfeng's series of actions, the woman raised her lips slightly and showed a smile of appreciation and admiration. It is really touching to be able to run faster than a bullet and to give up his life for such a woman. After Yu Lingfeng was shot, the expression on his face was not at all moved. The woman in red seemed to have discovered this, so she frowned slightly and stared at Yu Lingfeng in confusion. While the woman in red was stunned, Yu Lingfeng suddenly raised his hand, and a few tiny silver needles flew out from nowhere. Then, 3 people fell in front of him, leaving only the woman in red and her body. There was a man next to him who was just watching the show and was not even prepared for a fight. After seeing Yu Lingfeng kill his accomplice, the man smiled brightly and clapped his hands. "Wonderful, wonderful, I have been traveling in the world for many years, and this is the first time I have seen such a killing method. Besides, weren't you shot in the chest?" The man frowned in confusion as he spoke. Yu Lingfeng raised the corner of his mouth into a sneer, then stretched out his hand expressionlessly and took out a bullet from his left heart. The woman in red's frown deepened, and the man's playful smile dimmed, replaced by a look of disbelief. She even reached out to rub her eyes, and when she looked closer, she found that Yu Lingfeng was really, he took out the bullet from his heart with his bare hands. Yu Lingfeng threw the bullets at them so fast that they thought they were fired from guns. Fortunately, they were quick and dodged sideways, but a deep scratch was still left on the woman's arm, and bright red blood came out soon. "Damn, are you human?" The man seemed particularly excited, and even took a few steps closer to Yu Lingfeng, wanting to see Yu Lingfeng up close. Yu Lingfeng ignored them at all. He just walked to Xia Ying's side and said to Gu Chang, "Come out." Yu Lingfeng obviously saw that Xia Ying's eyes became dull. Now she was completely manipulated by the Gu. If no action was taken, Xia Ying might die of exhaustion. The little Gu bugs fluttered their wings and flew back into the Gu bug bracelet. Xia Ying immediately closed her eyes and slumped back. Yu Lingfeng reached out to catch Xia Ying. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 954. Chapter 954. Anyone who blocks my way will be killed without mercy. Upon seeing this, the woman in red murmured to herself, "Silver Gu." Hearing the whisper of the woman in red, the man raised his eyebrows and said jokingly, "Enchantress, is this the silver Gu that you miss every day?" The woman in red was silent, just looking at the Gu insect bracelet on Xia Ying's hand in ecstasy. Who is that woman, and why can she control the silver Gu? Isn't it obvious? The man stretched, squinted his eyes and smiled. The woman in red was stunned, then turned to look at him. "Do you know who she is?" "She is a great beauty." As soon as the man finished speaking, he heard the woman gritting her teeth. She knew that nothing serious could come out of his mouth. "Hand over Fanyan and Stefan, otherwise, they will be your fate." Yu Lingfeng handed the unconscious Xia Ying to 11 Ju. 11 Ju found that Xia Ying was injured, frowned, and said to Yu Lingfeng, "Master, Xia Ying is injured." Yu Lingfeng's harsh tone suddenly softened when he spoke to them. "You take good care of her." Yu Lingfeng resisted and did not look at Xia Ying's injuries. "Hey, handsome guy, we meet again." The man greeted Yu Lingfeng with a smile. Yu Lingfeng looked at him with half-closed eyes, and suddenly recognized him as the killer he had been chasing for a long time that day and then jumped into the river. He knew he was not dead. "Hand over Stefan and Sanyan." Yu Lingfeng just repeated it again with a cold face, ignoring the man's greeting. Yu Lingfeng glanced around, but except for the wooden man-like Sanskrit sound, he did not see Stefan. The man's mouth raised slightly, then he walked to the trunk of the van, opened it, and immediately pulled out a person from inside. That person happened to be Stefan. Yu Lingfeng's expression was still indifferent, but it was terrifyingly indifferent, making it impossible to figure out his inner thoughts at the moment. The man put Stefan on the ground, and at the same time he and the woman looked at each other for a while. Then, the two of them started at the same time and jumped into the grass on the side at a very fast speed. The woman in red took the Sanskrit away, leaving Stefan behind. Yu Lingfeng had already guessed something when they looked at each other, and was ready to kill them. However, the skills of these two people were obviously higher than those of the ones who had just died. They were able to avoid Yu Lingfeng's silver needle with almost a slight difference. Yu Lingfeng followed them and tried to capture them alive. At least, he wanted to bring Fanyan back. Those two people probably didn't expect that Yu Lingfeng's skills were so extraordinary. Just when Yu Lingfeng stretched out his hand to reach them, the woman in red shook her sleeves, and then a burst of red smoke enveloped Yu Lingfeng. View ahead. Not only could he not see anything, but his eyes felt extremely dry and so painful that he stopped moving immediately. Yu Lingfeng seemed to hear the conversation between the two in a trance. "Damn it, Enchantress, you are so cruel, I still plan to get to know this guy. After you get down to the underworld, you can worship me, but anyone who blocks my way will be killed without mercy." "Master." Yu Lingfeng squinted his eyes. He didn't know whether it was because the red mist around him hadn't dispersed yet, or something else. At this moment, his vision was only red like blood. Yu Lingfeng heard 11 Jews call not far away, but his eyes seemed to be burning on fire. He didn't have the strength to respond to 11 Jew. After a while, police sirens sounded all around. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yun Suya. Chapter 955. Chapter 955. I have to be a blind person during this period of time. When Officer Song arrived, there were 3 corpses around. Xia Ying was unconscious and Yu Lingfeng's eyes were red. As for 11 Ju, because the current system is different from the past, Yu Lingfeng was afraid that he would be injured, so he ordered him not to act rashly. 11 Ju approached Yu Lingfeng, his eyes were red, and he stared straight into Yu Lingfeng's eyes. "Master, what's wrong with your eyes, are you okay?" This is the first time 11 Ju has seen Yu Lingfeng injured, and judging from the situation, he seems to be seriously injured. Yu Lingfeng closed his eyes tightly and did not answer, but 11 Ju had been by Yu Lingfeng's side for so many years, and Yu Lingfeng's look made him understand. Yu Lingfeng's silence at this moment made 11 Ju feel even more sad. After Officer Song took care of the corpses, he walked towards Yu Lingfeng with a complicated expression on his face. "I received several police calls from drivers. What happened?" Officer Song stared at Yu Lingfeng's eyes for a while, frowned and asked, "Are your eyes okay?" "How can it be okay?" Yu Lingfeng didn't say anything, but 11 Ju on the side was anxious. That woman just now was cruel and ruthless at first sight. She deliberately poured red powder on the master's eyes, and then the master's eyes never opened. I think, if it wasn't for because the master is not an ordinary person, he may have been poisoned to death by that woman's poisonous powder. The more 11 Ju spoke, the more he couldn't hold his tongue. Yu Lingfeng was afraid that if he continued to speak, some secret would be exposed, so he quickly interrupted him. "I'm fine, I just have to be blind these days." Yu Lingfeng Jiun said softly, and then slowly opened his eyes. The eyes that used to be as dazzling as the stars at night were much dimmed now, as if they were like a dead lake. Even if the wind blows, it will not leave any ripples. "Damn it, brother you're blind and you're still okay." Officer Song curled his lips, then tentatively waved his hand in front of Yu Lingfeng's eyes. As expected, he didn't react at all. Police Officer Song's mouth drooped, with a hint of unexplainable emotion on his face. "Go to the hospital. Zihu will follow me to the police station to take notes." Police Officer Song then looked at 11 Ju. "No, I'll go to the police station with you. I just have something to ask you." Yu Lingfeng was calm from beginning to end. That Officer Song couldn't understand. How could it be possible for a normal person to have this mentality? His eyes were blind, and he still acted as if it had nothing to do with him. Wait, Officer Song noticed the blood on Yu Lingfeng's chest. You are hurt. Officer Song looked intently at Yu Lingfeng's chest, and then began to call to the medical staff next to him, there are wounded people here, please get there quickly. Yu Lingfeng reached out and knocked off Officer Song's greeting hand, no, the wound has healed. Go back to the police station. You don't need to worry about my injury. Yu Lingfeng said, then walked around from Officer Song, took Xia Ying from 11 Ju's arms, and looked at her lovingly for a while, with heartache in her eyes. 11 Ju, send Stefan home first. Song Yang and I will go to the police station. Yes, master. Zihu nodded, then helped Stefan, who was still unconscious, and walked towards the Xia family. Officer Song looked at Yu Lingfeng's determined look and couldn't say anything. This man was very stubborn and would not listen to anything he said. Now that he was injured like this, he still insisted on showing off. It was really elusive. Well, it's the last day of July, please vote for me. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 956. Chapter 956, The Gangster is coming to take revenge on you. Brother Yu, the cameras around us recorded it. You killed those 3 people. Police Officer Song walked towards Yu Lingfeng, who was checking Xia Ying's injuries and had no intention of paying any attention to Officer Song. Xia Ying had no other injuries except the wound on her arm. However, she had just been bent over by 8 goo insects at the same time, which consumed too much energy, so she was very weak now. Yu Lingfeng leaned forward and placed a light kiss on Xia Ying's pale lips. Officer Song looked on and coughed violently. How long have you not forgotten to spread the dog food? Police Officer Song took a sip of water and said in a weird voice. Yu Lingfeng then raised his head and looked at him. Who are those people from? Officer Song raised the corners of his lips and smiled, you have killed people, and you still don't know who they are. They kidnapped Stefan and Fanyan, and almost killed Xia Ying. They asked for it. Yu Lingfeng's eyes were cold and he spoke word by word. Let's just say, brother, you won't kill people casually. Officer Song smiled and sat down on the sofa next to Yu Lingfeng. I've known you for so long, and this is the first time I've seen you kill someone. Yu Lingfeng sneered and said to himself, that's because you don't understand me well enough. As long as anyone touches his bottom line, he will never tolerate it and will kill him without mercy. Do you know who you killed? Officer Song calmed his expression, the boss who ranks 9th, 11th, and 14th on the killer list. Yu Lingfeng smiled disdainfully and said coldly, I don't care about those dead people. Who are the 2 who escaped? The first-class master of Qinsha, he is also the face killer of Qinsha, the second-ranked Hami Melon and the 4th-ranked Blood Peach Enchantress in the killer rankings. These 2 people have been silent for a long time. They were feared existences in the killer world back then. When they were on the list, they were only 18 years old. The Blood Peach Enchantress was famous for being ruthless. She was young and had countless blood on her hands. Although she was very skilled, she had never killed anyone directly. People. He likes to torture the other person slowly and make the other person commit suicide because he can't bear it anymore. His methods are extremely bad. Police Officer Song explained to Yu Lingfeng in a serious manner. Who is first? Yu Lingfeng just raised his eyes lightly and then asked. The new gang leader of Qinsha. Officer Song curled his lips, but that person is very mysterious. There are almost no legends about him in the world. It is said that he is a very young dandy. Yu Lingfeng pursed her lips and opened her lips, trying to say something, but in the end she said nothing. Qinsha is now in decline. Just a few ancient gods came out to perform a mission and met you. You killed several of Kinsh's capable killers. I guess the gang leader will come to seek revenge on you soon. Officer Song said jokingly, taking a sip of water slowly. It would be best if he comes. I'm about to ask him about his premeditated plan. Fanyan is still in their hands, so it's probably more dangerous than anything else. If it's because Fanyan is also a killer, and they kidnapped her, maybe she can be classified as a member of their killer world. But Stefan is an autistic child, what conflict does he have with their interests? What do they want to do when they attack him again and again? Yu Lingfeng's tone was so angry that Officer Song beside him felt numb in his heart. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 957. Chapter 957, The worldview has been repeatedly refreshed. Fanyan was originally the third-ranked killer on the killer list, and she was also a very awesome being. She was already in the top 10 on the list when she was 17 years old, and was the youngest known killer at the time. Later, she steadily rose to the top third. She is a genius killer. Of course, all this is related to her ability to use goo worms, so she is hated by many people now, and it is inevitable that she will be like this. Some people came here to take advantage of her. Some people wanted to kill her to vent their hatred, and naturally some people wanted to learn her witchcraft. Officer Song became more and more energetic as he spoke, and continued, actually, I think the Shadow Hunters organization is really inhumane. The witch Fanyan was also a former facade killer after all. She performed so many tasks and helped the organization kill so many people. Later. If you don't want it, you don't want it, and in the current state of life and death, there is simply no nostalgia. Even if you keep a dog for a long time, you will have feelings for it, not to mention that Fanyan is still a person. You know quite a lot. Yu Lingfeng snorted lightly. I have encountered many cases where killers like them have intervened. If nothing else, the few you killed today blocked my progress in solving the case several times. No matter how big-hearted I am, I still have to do more homework. If you encounter people like them in the future, you really have to take a detour. Police Officer Song spoke with sincerity and sincerity. Then if I kill them today, wouldn't I be doing you a big favor? Yu Lingfeng joked. One code equals one code, you are also killing someone. Yu Lingfeng raised his eyebrows, so you still want to arrest me? Officer Song raised his lips and smiled, I will arrange a lawyer for you. Killing in self-defense is legally allowed. Although Yu Lingfeng couldn't see Officer Song's expression at the moment, he could hear gloating from his mean tone. You know I hate troublesome things like this. Yu Lingfeng said with a cold face. It's just a formality, don't feel pressure, Officer Song said with a bad smile, you are a good citizen, and the other party is a professional killer. The other party almost killed you and almost killed your fiancé. In order to protect yourself, you had no choice but to kill, Judge. I will accuse you. As Officer Song said, he came to Yu Lingfeng and said slowly, now that you are blind and Xia Ying is unconscious, I have no choice but to show mercy and send you back. Yu Lingfeng rolled his eyes and said, don't think that I don't know that you are in trouble. Ha, you can see this too. Police Officer Song smiled brightly. Officer Song leaned over and was about to hug Xia Ying, but when his hand was still in the air, he was suddenly stopped by Yu Lingfeng's quick action, I'll do it myself. Officer Song retracted his hand angrily and touched his nose, you kid, do you want to do this? You are blind and you still have such a strong desire to control. Yu Lingfeng ignored Officer Song's complaints, but picked up Xia Ying, and then said to Officer Song, you lead the way from the front. As Officer Song walked slowly, he said, by the way, brother Yu, what did you mean when you said you would be blind in a few days? What happened to your eyes? How can anyone be blind and be healed in a few days? Officer Song felt that his worldview had been repeatedly refreshed after meeting Yu Lingfeng. It's just poison, it will be fine in 3 days at the latest. Then what's going on with your chest? Officer Song obviously saw that it was a bullet wound. How could this guy still be alive and kicking? It's already fine, you don't need to ask these meaningless things. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 958. Chapter 958. It's a pity to die like this. At this moment, Hami Melon and Blood Peach Enchantress are on their way back. Beautiful girl, how do you explain it to the gang leader? Hami Melon was biting a piece of wheat in his mouth, looking carefree. When he said this, he frowned slightly. Hami Melon has never been the kind of person who misses old friendships. Of course, in their profession of killers, people are dying around them all the time, so they have long been used to it. Even if the people who died today were colleagues who had worked together for many years, Hami Melon would have already reached the state of peace of mind. Be honest. Blood Peach Enchantress is still thinking about what happened to Yu Lingfeng just now, and who that person is. If it weren't for good luck today, neither she nor Hamagiwa would be able to come back. Fortunately, she had an idea and sprinkled poisonous powder on him. Those who were poisoned by her Blood Peach Demon Queen's poisonous powder would not survive tonight, and would eventually die of torture, and their death was quite tragic. If it weren't for her instinctive desire to survive that made her commit such a murderous act, she would actually want to explore this person's background. But now it seems that everything is too late. The body will probably be cold by now. Hami Melon glanced at the Blood Peach Enchantress. He and the Blood Peach Enchantress have performed many missions together. They are the partners with the longest time and the strongest relationship among Kinsha. Therefore, Hami Guo knew what she was thinking at the moment just by looking at her. Do you regret killing that handsome little brother? Hamagiwa twitched the corner of his mouth and said jokingly, my little brother was so good looking and had such great martial arts skills. It's a pity that he died like this. He was looking for death on his own. Can't you see that if I hadn't killed him, we would be the ones drinking mangpo soup at Nahi Bridge now? When the Blood Peach Enchantress said this, the expression on her face was as cold as ice. Just looking at it made people fearful. Hami Melon stopped making any sound, and just curled his lips, as if he was about to speak but hesitated. So why did you go through so much trouble to keep this woman? Hami Melon glanced at the unconscious Fanyan next to the Blood Peach Fairy girl and said. Although she used to be the third-ranked killer in the killer rankings, and the mention of her name as a witch makes people tremble. But now, she is just a timid poor woman who has lost her memory and can't remember anything. Hami Guo couldn't figure out what there was in Fanyan that the Blood Peach Fairy would take the trouble to catch, and at the critical moment, the Blood Peach Fairy was not willing to let go. The mission of the organization is to catch Stefan, but the Blood Peach Enchantress, who has always been self-denial and law-abiding, now chooses personal interests between personal interests and organizational interests, which is really rare. Have you forgotten how she was able to reach the third position in the killer rankings at such a young age? Blood Peach Enchantress curled her lips and showed a meaningful smile, and then said, although she has forgotten how to refine Gu now, I will let her remember it slowly. You want to secretly learn her voodoo skills? Hami Melon raised his eyebrows, somewhat unconvinced. How could this Blood Peach Fairy, a person with such arrogance, use such despicable means to secretly learn other people's skills? It really made Cantaloupe a little stunned. I have had issues with her, and I have also said that if we meet her next time, I will do whatever it takes to make her pay with blood. Hami Melon looked at the cold eyes of the Blood Peach Enchantress and couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 959. Chapter 959, this thing depends on talent. You want to learn her bewitching skills and then kill her. Just thinking about Cantaloupe gives me a strong image. The Blood Peach Enchantress is the Blood Peach Enchantress, and she is the most vengeful person. It's okay if others don't mess with her. If you mess with her even a little bit, she will pay you back. What on earth did she do? Hami Melon can no longer hide the burning soul of gossip in his heart. On one mission, she not only robbed me of my prey, but also almost killed me. I once said that I will definitely repay this revenge. Hami Guo listened to the Blood Peach Fairy's stern story, shrugged, and said no more. He seemed careless, but actually reminded him intentionally, it's easy to go crazy when refining goo, and it's easy to be backbitten by goo insects. You'd better be careful. This thing depends on talent, otherwise, everyone can refine goo. Blood Peach Enchantress kept a straight face the whole time, and Hami Guo didn't know if she listened to what she said. He still felt sorry for the little brother who was as handsome as a god. It was such a pity that he died. When Xia Ying woke up, she felt that her head was dazed. She seemed to have slept for a long time. As a result, when she just woke up, her mind was still blank. She had almost forgotten the memory before she fell asleep. Xia Ying said after lying in bed for a long time, I gradually remembered. She went to find Stefan, and then she met a group of killers. She seemed to be injured, and she also seemed to have seen Yu Lingfeng. Woke up. Xia Ying was startled, then looked up and saw Yu Lingfeng slowly walking towards her and sitting down beside Xia Ying's bed. Xia Ying found that her injuries seemed to be gone, probably caused by Yu Lingfeng. Yu Lingfeng, Stefan. He is fine. He is at the Xia family now, and 11 Ju is protecting him. Xia Ying suddenly realized that she was in Yu Lingfeng's castle. There have been too many things happening recently. It's not safe at your home, and it's not easy to explain to your parents, so I'm coming back first. Yu Lingfeng explained aloud. I want to go see him. As soon as Xia Ying got up, she found that her whole body was sore and painful, and she couldn't exert herself at all. Don't move yet. Yu Lingfeng reached out to comfort Xia Ying, you haven't recovered yet, your body is still very weak. What's going on, Yu Lingfeng? I have a headache. Xia Ying frowned, holding her head and said. I told you that it takes a lot of physical energy to be possessed by goo insects, not to mention 8 of them at the same time. You are very weak now. Don't move yet. If you are really worried, you can have a video chat with Stefan. After Yu Lingfeng finished speaking, he took out his cell phone and handed it to Xia Ying. Xia Ying was startled. Yu Lingfeng seemed to have something wrong. His eyes were covered with red bloodshot eyes, as if he hadn't slept in a few days, and when Yu Lingfeng just handed the phone over, he handed it to Xia Ying's side. Xia Ying tentatively and cautiously stretched out her hand and waved it in front of Yu Lingfeng's eyes. Yu Lingfeng's eyes showed no emotion. Yu Lingfeng's eyes seemed to be invisible. Xia Ying immediately panicked. What happened when she was unconscious? Why did Yu Lingfeng suddenly become like this? What happened to his eyes? Isn't he immune to injury? What is going on? Yu Lingfeng, your eyes. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 960. Chapter 960 always put her first. Xia Ying reached out to touch Yu Lingfeng's eyes, but Yu Lingfeng intercepted her arm. Yu Lingfeng's eyes were a little flustered. For the first time, Xia Ying saw fear and uneasiness in Yu Lingfeng's eyes. If she hadn't noticed it, how long would Yu Lingfeng have wanted to hide it from her? What's wrong with your eyes? Why can't you see? Xia Ying's tone was filled with tears. She always thought that Yu Lingfeng, who was invincible, would be injured one day. Xia Ying thought about this and began to feel faintly in her heart. Uneasy. I'm fine. Yu Lingfeng couldn't bear to hear Xia Ying's voice. It was more uncomfortable than cutting his heart with a knife. You are lying, your eyes can no longer see. As Xia Ying spoke, she forced herself to get up from the bed. When her legs stood on the ground, she could not help but start to tremble. Yu Lingfeng quickly reached out and held Xia Ying in his arms, comforting her in a low voice, I'm fine. I'll be fine in a few days. Trust me. Yu Lingfeng's tone was unusually gentle, and when it fell on people's ears, it was like a soft breeze blowing by. Really? Xia Ying looked up at Yu Lingfeng doubtfully. Of course, I told you that I won't get hurt. Even if I am really hurt, I will be fine. When Yu Lingfeng said this, there was always a faint smile on the corner of his mouth, as if to comfort Xia Ying. However, the more Yu Lingfeng forced herself to comfort Xia Ying, the more Xia Ying felt distressed. Yu Lingfeng is always like this, no matter what, he always puts Xia Ying first. Then I believe you, you must get better soon. Xia Ying's trembling and stiff body gradually relaxed. Yu Lingfeng put Xia Ying back on the bed, covered her with a quilt, and placed a gentle kiss on Xia Ying's forehead. Have a good rest. Westju is watching over Stefan. When you get better, I will accompany you to see him. Xia Ying nodded, and was about to close her eyes when she suddenly remembered that she had just closed her eyes and opened them suddenly. Yu Lingfeng, you can't see now, are you going to get lost or something? This is my own home. I know the layout of it well. How could I get lost? Yu Lingfeng said half amusingly, then reached out and stroked Xia Ying's head. Sleep well. Yu Lingfeng watched Xia Ying gradually fall asleep, then carefully exited the room, walked to the corridor, and dialed 11 Ju's number. Master. 11 Ju answered the phone immediately when it rang for the first time. Is Stefan awake? I woke up, but now I am very mentally unstable, and I keep looking for Xia Ying. As Zihu said, Yu Lingfeng heard something faintly on the other end. Probably Stefan's psychiatrist was providing him with ideological counseling, but Stefan seemed to be uncooperative and kept making noises, causing chaos in the house. Without seeing Xia Ying, Stefan couldn't calm down. 11 Ju is also in a dilemma. Xia Ying is now weak, Stefan has been hit again, and the master is away now. Although 11 Ju is entrusted to take care of Stefan, he is really unable to do so. Tell Stefan to tell him to be good, and Xia Ying will go see him in the evening. Okay, master. Zihu nodded. Yu Lingfeng had already hung up the phone. Zihu immediately walked over and passed the news to Stefan to calm him down. Thanks to the little cutie, Fang Yi, 139.97, and Lan 11. Brittany rewards. Please give me a monthly pass at the beginning of the month. End of this chapter.